Hello everybody, welcome back to Wolfeei. Today we will be talking about a topic that has become very relevant yet again, and I will be giving my 2 cents and thoughts on it. The MCCIification of MCC event. If you don't know what that means, a lot of the recent year, 2-year updates for MCC have been somewhat closely related to island updates, etc., which, if you don't know, MCC Island is the public MCC server, and some people take issue with that, some people don't, but I will be talking about it and kind of maybe helping to put into perspective why things maybe are the way they are, because it has been explained in the past. It just seems like some people don't really listen. Also, I will say, as much as what I maybe will say in this video, not liking it is completely fine. Of course, you are completely entitled to your own opinion, but I am also entitled to explain why things maybe are the way they are, because they have told us, the Noxcrew have told us why things are the way that they are now. Anyways, this post is the one that incentivized me to kind of talk about it, because the post reads, Skybattle needs to stop being MCCified, with the main argument mostly saying that there has been a consistent player getting a bunch of points because with MCC Island, etc., and with how the game has kind of been shifting from what it originally was to what it is on MCC Island, there is a level of skill difference and experience difference that these higher tier players have in the game. For the most part, of course, right? So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it in full. One thing that I very much recall, because let me preface this. I had this opinion as well, and I still will say I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of the MCC Island changes coming to the event, but because it's been explained, I understand why it's happening. Doesn't mean I'm the biggest fan of it, but there is a reason why. I think it was Daniel. I don't want to confirm because I don't want to point fingers, of course, right? I think Daniel explained this in the past at some point, with people taking issue with MCCI changes coming to the event in the past, but the situation is as follows. You either get changes, including MCC Island changes, or you get no changes for the most part. The reasoning behind that is because with a similar code base or similar code framework, whatever that is used between the event and island itself, these things are already existent on MCC Island and they function on MCC Island. They can more easily be brought from island to the event without having to do a lot of extra workload on top of it, which means, yes, this is available content that the event has yet to see. It is a choice to use that or to not use that. The problem is people who don't like the MCC Island changes won't like to see these new updates coming to the event, and people who want to see the event updated won't like not seeing any changes come to the event. So it is a lose-lose situation overall in terms of MCCI, or in terms of MCC as an event. Now, I think that, like mentioned, it is still not the best, but it is a matter of 50-50 choice. Would you rather have any updates for MCC with a portion of that coming from MCC Island, where if you remove the MCC Island updates, there is a lot less new content and a lot less updates, a lot less differentiation in the content that is played in the event? Or would you rather have more updates, but some of them are MCCI related? I don't really have a preference between the two. I like seeing the event be a little bit more different, but I also don't really love seeing certain features from MCC Island make their way into the event. But it is a matter of what is your preference. Those are the two options that are on the table as of right now, at least, right? So let's look at the game roster for MCC and maybe take a look at how MCC Island has or can affect the games that are in the event. Ace Race obviously isn't on island. We won't have to worry about that for the most part. The only way maybe that you could have it be implemented is if there is custom movement on like a to get to your side map that maybe makes its way into Ace Race, but that's about it. Battle Box, I think the only thing technically that has been islandified from Battle Box is the addition of custom items such as damage orbs, etc., right? That I think, I could be wrong, I think they started on MCC Island and then made their way sometimes into the actual event. I don't think this has been a negative thing. I don't think this has necessarily been a net positive thing either, but I think it's for the better that BattleBox gets something to work with that maybe makes it feel a bit more unique. that is good for the event to have. However, I also understand the argument of, hey, maybe you want BattleBox to just stay as is because maybe the game is fine, which I think it's fine. I think BattleBox is a good game, but I understand, I think this is a game where the addition of MCCI items isn't really that big of a problem. Additionally, something that is important to mention, because I'm sure somebody will bring it up, is that right at the start, when MCC Island was being made, or when it was being publicly revealed at least, something along the lines of, we're going to try to keep event and island separate or different, was mentioned. That hasn't really been held onto for the extent of time that we have lived through, with both event and MCC Island living or existing next to each other, right? However, that's also a situation where maybe the expectations for the upkeep that is necessary for this server and for the event was maybe underestimated, and things maybe changed over time, where then you end up having to make a choice of, would you rather have updates or no updates? It's a choice. So it's something important to mention, I know, but yeah, the MCC Islandification of the event, it happens because that is kind of the gameplay that they have in store. And one thing that you need to understand is that the people behind MCC and MCC Island are the Nox crew, and the Nox crew's main priority, especially from a monetization standpoint, is Bedrock. So that's why you might see a bit of less of attention go to the event and to Island, especially simultaneously, because the maintenance that is needed for these two things is quite high, because on a monthly basis people expect new content every single time, which you probably don't understand how much effort it might need or it might require to get these changes done. Unless you're an event organizer, then you might have an understanding of how much it can take to update an event. And keep in mind, they also have a minigame server to host, and also Bedrock's stuff, so it's quite a lot. Regardless, Build Mart and Bingo and Grid Winners all not on MCC Island. Hole in the Wall, I don't think has really been islandified before. I think they had a I think it was for like one of the winter events or something. They had this little thing where you would have mobs, or maybe for Scuff, there was something where there was mobs on the thing, but it wasn't like the way it was in the actual server. The whole gimmick of MCC Island Hole in the Wall is the modifiers that kind of allow you to either grief other players, or kind of a natural disaster type of situation where things try to grief you. Hasn't really happened in Hole in the Wall. I think it's mostly been fine. I think Hole in the Wall has just been in a good state with how they've changed the maps up quite a bit and made the floors different, which makes the gameplay a little bit more unique every single time. So I think Hole in the Wall is fine. Meltdown doesn't exist in Island. Parkour Tag doesn't exist in Island. Parkour Warrior, to me, is the biggest unfortunate one from MCC Island. I think having almost identical parkour courses between the event and Island is very unfortunate. I think that is a little detrimental to the event experience. Mostly as a player, or as a viewer, sorry, I've never played it during the event. I'm sure I wouldn't hate it, of course, right? I think the game would be fine to play. I don't think there's any problem with it. But I think as a viewer, it is a little bit less interesting to watch when MCC Island already has a lot of these games. It's mostly relevant for that active viewer and player base of MCC and MCC Island, because that's just the people that will play the parkour most actively. And also be probably the ones that give the most feedback regarding it. I think one thing that is important to note is I think a casual viewer base, right? Portion of the Hermit audience, for example, who don't really play MCC Island and only really watch because their streamer's playing, totally valid by the way, probably don't really care that Parkour Warrior courses are on MCC Island because they don't see them anyways, right? For them, it's probably fine. But I understand for the core audience, the core player and viewer base of MCC, it could be a little bit of a bummer to see the same stuff over and over. And I am one of the people that agrees with that it's a little bit unfortunate just to see the same courses on the server as they are in the event, or mostly vice versa. I think it's fine if both have some overlap, but it feels like it's 95% the same courses shared between the two, between the event and the public server, MCC Island, with the only change or the only difference being the like final leap hard thing, which is like whatever. Anyways, Railroad Rush is not on MCC Island. Rocket Spleef Rush is another prime example. This one is very controversial. I think this turned Rocket Spleef from like a definitive top 3 MCC game to, for some people, a like middle of the pack tier MCC game. Maybe like a high end, but not like a top end MCC game. Because I think Rocket Spleef had a lot of charm to it before MCC Island came into play. I think having no durability on the elytras was nice. I think it just meant that the game was a little bit less punishing. It just felt like you had a lot more room to work with. I understand that there's probably a very valid reason why they made this change and don't plan to revert this change, but I still would have preferred seeing the old version. I do think that there is a place for the new version to exist. I don't think the new version is bad at all. I think the new version is still a good game. I just think that previously the game was excellent, now the game is good. So it's just lowered in quality slightly because of that change. Mostly the quality of life change, really. Because one of my main issues with this game is that the need for elytra usage is a niche skill, right? And when MCC has, for example, a Twitch Rivals featuring some like OTV and Friends type of people, the chances that they are familiar with this type of skill is much, much lower, and it usually results in them getting eliminated a lot sooner. This also applies to maybe some non-English teams or some other people who maybe play an event that don't really play Minecraft very often, and it's just detrimental to their experience overall to have to deal with this durability thing, because it's not the most obvious thing on your screen. It is clear you can find it, but it's not the most obvious, so there's a very good chance that somebody wouldn't know why they are dying and would just lose because it's a niche skill. So that's the main argument I have against Rocket Spleef Rush, the new version. But I also don't think, like mentioned, I don't think it's bad. I just think the game went from really good to good. SOT, not on Island. Sky Battle, this is what this post mostly reverts to. I hadn't really had much of a problem with Sky Battle from like a map standpoint. A lot of people have a problem with the, I think it's called Super Compressor, that like map from Halloween that was in this past MCC as well. I do think that the introduction of levies is a little I think there is value in it. I think there is stuff about levies that is good. I think, you know, there are elements of having levies that could help, for example, a lower tier player, etc., perform better. The problem is that, and you'll see this in Shane's POV for MCC as well, assuming that we get there. I don't remember when exactly Sky Battle was being played, but in Shane's POV for Sky Battle, you'll literally see him getting funneled like a lot of stuff, and it kind of just means that he is the one getting all the good items and all the levies and stuff, and his team doesn't really use it because ultimately, in reality, he is probably going to be the one to utilize it the best. As you can see here, Shane has 3 levies. I assume his teammates have 0. This is the correct play for Shane, by the way. I'm not criticizing his way of playing the game. This is the correct play, but it does kind of showcase the flaw with this type of gameplay in Sky Battle, where these items are just mostly given to that experienced, really good player, and the rest of the team kind of doesn't really get anything, because, like mentioned, this is the optimal play. Purple team ended up doing really well in this game. Shane ended up getting first by a lot in this game, and that's because he plays MCC Island, he's very familiar with these items, and the funneling strategy is just optimal. It feels kind of like what happened with Skyblockle in the past, where there was an Iron Man strategy, which I think also Shane used a lot in testing, and it just worked almost like 90% of the time. You're just gonna win using this strategy. It's just kind of, it feels a little bit it feels like that like cool like gameplay element of Sky Battle is a little bit less appealing, just because it's more predictable. It's kind of expected, and you're gonna just see the same people kind of perform super well at this game no matter what, which, to be fair, Fruitberry's pre-MCC Islandification was another example there, but usually the reason for that would be a little different. It's not because he's using, you know, these a bunch of like MCC Island tech and strats, etc. It's because he's just placing his blocks really quickly. So there's a lot of arguments to be had, but I do think it is completely valid for the island aspect of Sky Battle to be criticized, because it's just very it's very essentially practice dependent. You need to know what you're doing. You need to have played MCC Island to really stand a chance in performing well in this game, for the most part. It doesn't necessarily always have to be the case, but if you want to have a performance like Shane, you'll need to be able to do that type of stuff regularly to really get that experience that you need to perform well in the game. Next up, SG is on MCC Island, and then to get to the other side, this one I think is kind of 50-50. I don't really love seeing, it's similar to Parkour Warrior, I don't really love seeing the same movement-based maps on Island as they are in the event, but that also doesn't happen very often. There is a selection of maps in the event that are also on Island, but definitely not all of them. It is a bit more exclusive than Parkour Warrior is, and I also think that to get to our side on Island doesn't really get played that much, so I don't think it's really an issue. I haven't really had a problem too much with seeing MCCI gameplay in To Get Your Side to the extent that it ruined my viewing experience specifically because of that, so I think that one's fine. But yeah, that's kind of the recap on MCCI or MCCI changes happening to the event. Sky Battle has now been mentioned as one example where it feels like it's a problem. I don't think this is going to really be solved unless they completely strip away all these custom movement options, but at that point you're just playing Sky Wars, so is that what you want? I don't know. Same thing with Parkour Warrior. I don't really see them fixing this problem unless they add a bunch of maps exclusive to Parkour Warrior in the event, but then the problem is people on Island may ask for it as well, and why would you then at that point gatekeep the maps from the event to Island if people want it, and because you've done it in the past, so that one's also one that's to be debated. And I think that's mostly, and Rocket Spleef I think is another example where people took issue with it because it made the gameplay experience slightly worse than it was before. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on the MCCIification of MCC event. Again, to recap, yes, did they say that they would keep the event and MCCI separate at the start of MCC Island? Yes, that is correct. They did say that. Is there a chance that they underestimated the workload that was needed to upkeep that, and instead of doing absolutely no changes for one of the two, event or Island, no changes for one of them, they would just try to use the content that they add to one of them to the other as well? Yes, they do that. When they add something new to the event, it often will appear, if it is on Island, it will often appear on Island. If there's like, you know, a particular side map or a Parkour Warrior course or a Battlebox map, etc. And yes, if they add something to MCC Island, will they sometimes bring it to the event? Yeah, of course, because it already exists. They might as well try it for one. And that's just the way it is. So yeah, that's a thing. And also, again, like Daniel mentioned, I think, I could be wrong, I want to say it was Daniel, because Daniel's usually the one that says this type of stuff. You either get no changes, or you get the MCC Island changes. Pick your poison, really. Which one do you like the most, or which one do you dislike the least? Whatever your preference is, just, hey, let me know, I guess, because that is the reality of things. Noxtrew has other priorities. Noxtrew don't just do MCC. That is a reality check that you may need to realize. And yes, it's okay to not like that, but having, I guess, posts regarding disliking the same thing every single month and just reiterating the same point may not be the most valuable. Though I will not criticize this post. I don't think this post is of no value. I think this is a very important post because I don't think it has been talked about enough as of recent. Anyways, thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.